Well, good evening, everyone. This is Diana Pierce, and I have What's Next with Diana Pierce. Would you know what, if you were having a heart attack? Well, in the United States, someone dies from a heart attack every 38 seconds, just in like that. So my guest tonight survived her cardiac emergency and has an extraordinary story of survival to share with us this evening. How many years ago was this? And kind of set the pace for us.
It's going to be 11 years on Monday, February 12th.
All right.
So it was 2007, and it was a beautiful, crisp morning, and I got up and I worked out, did Pilates. I volunteered at my kid's school. He was in junior high at the time. Had a rehearsal, went home, made dinner, went to a recording session. And at that time, one of my brothers, Ricky, was in the John Mayer band, or had just left them, but they were in town, and he said, come on, let's go hang out. And I'm going, no, I know you, you're gonna start at 1 in the morning. So I said, love ya, gotta get up with kids in the morning. And I'm driving home. That night, I felt this, in a conversation with one of my kids, this major pain in my chest, like a muscle pull, but then it started expanding. And the way I explained it is that it felt like a dagger was put into my heart, and it was worse in seconds, not minutes. So I quickly got off the phone with my son, and luckily for us, when it's later on at night, the freeways are pretty quiet, and I could pull right over and call 911. And I had the operator stay with me until the state trooper got to my car. He helped me call my house. An ambulance was on its way, and I picked up my purse and walked to the ambulance because, of course, you know, everything had to be okay and I had to be in control. But what was interesting about this night was that what I learned later is most people don't make it beyond the feeling in their chest. Yes, I had a cardiac emergency. I also knew that I had some cardiac issues in that I needed to have an aortic valve replacement. But we were staving it off into the future. You know, it hadn't, it was going to be in the future. But I didn't realize something else was happening. And that is that from the aorta, one of the valves in the heart, comes the aorta itself. The aortic valve comes the aorta, and it's the upside down umbrella handle you see. It's about the size of a garden hose, and it goes down the center of your body, and your organs, your arms, your carotids all feed off it. There was an aneurysm that was created because of this leaky valve. And it burst. Wow. That's what I felt.
Wow.
Got to the hospital, and I asked them to take me to the hospital where I knew all my records would be, instead of just any hospital because it was an emergency. I had done that. I had gone to a different hospital when I was feeling great palpitations and was very scared, and they said, well, go talk to your doctor because tomorrow we don't have your records. I remembered that, and they took me to Abbott Northwestern, which is Minneapolis Heart, and they had all my records. They did start to treat me for a heart attack. And actually the blood thinner, which is one of the things they do, was on its way. And they took the chest x-ray, and the emergency room physician that was assigned to my case was looking at my x-ray and said, oh, you son of a gun. I'm being kind. He said to himself, he was just, if you don't check her for this other thing, you could lose her. And before I knew it, he had changed courses, and he said, this is what I think might be happening. And he talked about how with 2 hands, imagine 2 straws and liquid going down the correct way, and then separation of the 2 straws on one side and the liquid going down, that liquid being the blood.
Right.
Then he talked about the fact that we need to go make sure that isn't what's happening. Well, it is what happened, and it also was that burst that people can read about, an aortic aneurysm. Some people only leave it at that. No, there's more to the story if you hear that. So not only was I bleeding out, as they say, in the meantime, it was dissecting. The blood was going down the right way and the wrong way, cutting off the blood to my major organs. I had lost a kidney already. I was dying. Because of his fast action, and everybody at Abbott Northwestern Hospital, within about an hour and a half, the team had totally changed. My husband said it looked like a SWAT team out there. When they got to my room, and the emergency room physician said, this is what's happening. Now you're going to see the cardiac surgeon come in. A cardiologist came in. The anesthesiologist came in. And when I was talking to the cardiac surgeon, he said, oh, I hear you're a singer. And I had a bunch of questions for him. And he said, listen, I'd like to answer your questions, but we got to go. He said, and he goes, I promise I'll come and hear you after this is all over with. So I'm thinking they're going to fix me. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I had no idea the severity of this. And oh, by the way, on the way into surgery, I was singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and the nurses are crying. I hear this after the fact because they're going, she has no idea what she's doing here. So, meaning it was, they knew the brevity of the situation.
Right. It was a lot more severe than you had any idea.
Yes, I had no idea, Diana. And I assumed that they would just fix me and I would get that valve that they had been talking to me about. But beyond that, I had never heard the phrase aortic dissection. And not until several days later, when I was finally out of what I will say is an induced coma, to keep me still because of the brand new valve, the partial mesh aorta, grafted to my now damaged aorta, which is quite severe. I just had no idea. And my husband came to me finally when I was admitted to the final room you're in as you're learning how to walk down a hall and trying to get some of your strength back. He said, "Oh yeah, aortic dissection." I went, "What?" He said, "This is what took the life of John Ritter." And it made sense, but it didn't make sense. It was quite a learning experience. My life leaving the hospital, I had to talk to my Pilates girl inside of me, and I was a person who walked. I had to talk to her and say, "You just were in a class 5, 6, 7 days ago," and made myself walk down the halls. And it felt, you're not yourself for sure because of the shock. But I've learned so much since then. And I just have to encourage anybody who has any sort of a heart-related issue, recognize that it's probably not just you it's happening to. If you look to your parents, your siblings, this is probably your first-degree relatives may have had a situation as well. And if not, you're the first person, they better start getting checked, especially with aortic issues. You know, and I would say the history of heart disease in general, vascular disease, we can't be quiet about this anymore. I knew 20 years prior that I was having some irregular heartbeats. I was able to have an echocardiogram. It was my other valve, the mitral valve, which a lot of women have issues with. And through medication, it subsided. But in my late 40s, it returned, never to be calm again. And that's when I learned about the valve. So not until well after, when I was speaking with my husband and learning about John Ritter, did I realize that this runs in family, and the education and the research that's doing to save people's lives is a miracle. I mean, your overall cardiovascular, as you so well put it, health is important, and you have to take those signs and symptoms very seriously. You have to know your numbers.
So yeah, and as a result, now brothers and your sisters, has everybody had a checkup to see where they are?
Yes, they have, and my children too, and it's time for them to all go get checked again, actually. And some of them have had a couple of checks, and as it turns out, much after the fact, because I had had a series of echoes from my late 20s periodically until this happened to me at age 52, my current cardiologist, Dr. Kevin Harris, was able to go back and look at all of my echoes, and he said, "Oh, you have a bicuspid aortic valve." One of the many things that leads to an enlarging of the aorta. And you know, it's one of the 4 things I know off the top of my head that is Ehlers-Danlos, it's Marfan syndrome, and Loeys-Dietz, and bicuspid aortic valve can all lead to this.
I think we have a question for you. Is that it? We have 2 questions. Yes. Yeah, let's just see what they are and see what we've got going on. All right, so from Fiona, she says, "My mother just passed away from heart complications." So she's now at 52.
Sorry.
She's sensitive to heart health issues. She wants to know what to look for.
Well, I think it's a really good idea to speak to your personal physician that this happened. And as a result of it running in the family, oftentimes they will take the lead and direct what tests they think you should have. And if you're feeling any irregular heartbeats, take yourself seriously. Make sure you talk about them and not back burner them. If you're finding you're sweating, if you're taking a walk and it's not normal, really document everything and have a conversation with your physician. And coupled with what has happened to her mother, now granted there is age in there, but when, here's the question, when did her mom's heart issues begin? And what was it like for her mom? And sometimes, you know, these gals were stoic and they didn't talk about stuff. So it's just it's a great idea. Okay, I'm going to say squeaky wheel because it's what came to my mind. Be the squeaky wheel. Tell your physician. Don't just check it. Go, look, this is what's going on in my family, and, you know, I'm really nervous. I had just lost a cousin. He was 52. He had cardiomyopathy, which is an enlarging of the heart, a brilliant jazz pianist, Bobby Peterson. So I finally got a stress test in my early 50s, and the irregular heartbeats, they started to take me a little more seriously. There you go. So what it did is it did some discovery for me, and I worked with my physicians to find the best plan. The problem is, I thought in staving that eventual aortic valve replacement surgery off into the future, that, you know, if maybe in the future I can get this done non-invasively, because as a singer, I didn't want open heart surgery.
Right.
No way, because that was scary to me to think of trying to heal after that. And you know, my body had its own rhythm, and here I am. I mean, my gosh, I'm so grateful.
My guest tonight is Patty Peterson, and we are talking about her experience with her aha moment, your live your gift.
Yes.
So we're going to take a pause just for a moment, but we're going to continue just in a moment. So stay with us.